The mahogany conference table stretched before me like an altar of judgment, its polished surface reflecting the stern faces of lawyers in their crisp suits. My hands trembled as I reached for the pen, the weight of 8 years of marriage suddenly crushing down on my shoulders like a lead blanket. "Don't sign those papers," my lawyer whispered urgently, her breath warm against my ear. "Look at page 47. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." Rachel Martinez had been my attorney for 3 years, ever since the incident with David's business partner that we'd swept under the rug like so many other things. Her dark eyes held a gravity I'd never seen before, and something else, pity, perhaps, or the kind of professional concern that comes with discovering ugly truths. I flipped through the divorce settlement with fingers that felt disconnected from my body. Page after page of legal jargon, asset divisions, custody arrangements. The words blurred together until I reached page 47, and then everything became crystal clear. Transfer of intellectual property rights to patented water purification system, patent hashtag 10/847/293, from Sophia Chin Morrison to David Morrison, effective. Immediately upon divorce finalization, the room tilted. The patent that had built our fortune, the invention that had launched Clearwater Technologies into a multi-million-dollar empire, David was claiming it as his own. "Mrs. Morrison?" The opposing counsel, a shark-faced man named Brennan, peered at me over his glasses. "Is there a problem?" I stared at the page, my mind racing back to that cramped garage apartment 7 years ago. The sketches scattered across our kitchen table, the endless nights of calculations, the eureka moment that had changed everything. My eureka moment. My invention. My life's work. "Sophia?" David's voice carried that practiced tone of concerned patience he used when I was being difficult. Sitting across from me in his $3,000 suit, he looked nothing like the struggling graduate student I'd married. Success had polished him into something sleek and predatory. "We've discussed this. The patent was filed under the company name, and as CEO, I need a moment," I managed, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Rachel's hand found mine under the table, her grip steady and warm. "Take all the time you need." The conference room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Seattle skyline stretching toward Elliott Bay. Somewhere in that maze of glass and steel was the Clearwater Technologies headquarters. The building I'd helped design, filled with employees whose paychecks depended on my invention. My invention that David was stealing. I thought of our daughter Emma, only 6 years old, sitting in her grandmother's living room right now, probably coloring or playing with her tablet, blissfully unaware that her world was about to shatter. She adored her father, saw him as this brilliant businessman who built something from nothing. The truth, that Mommy was the real genius behind their comfortable life, had never seemed important to share. Until now. "The patent application," I said slowly, looking directly at David. "I'd like to review the original filing." His lawyer, Brennan, shuffled through his papers. "That's really not necessary at this juncture. The ownership structure is clearly established through corporate." "The original application," I repeated, my voice gaining strength. "From 2016. David's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. To anyone else, he probably looked calm, in control. But I'd been married to him for 8 years. I knew that particular brand of controlled fury, usually reserved for employees who questioned his decisions or investors who pushed too hard. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Rachel was already typing on her phone. "I can have those documents pulled from the patent office within the hour." "That won't be necessary," David said quickly. "Too quickly. We can discuss the intellectual property division separately. Let's focus on the immediate settlement terms." But I was no longer focused on settlement terms. I was thinking about that night in 2016 when I'd called David from the lab, breathless with excitement. "I figured it out," I'd whispered into the phone. "The filtration issue, the cost problem, I solved it all." He'd brought champagne and Chinese takeout, and we'd celebrated in the empty office until dawn. The next week, he'd insisted on filing the patent under the company name for tax purposes. I'd been so in love, so trusting, so naive. Page 47, Rachel murmured again, and I realized she wasn't just talking about the patent. She was talking about everything that page represented. Years of gaslighting, of David slowly erasing my contributions, of making me believe I was just the supportive wife behind the brilliant businessman. I closed the settlement papers and looked at David, really looked at him. His perfectly styled hair, his confidence that bordered on arrogance, the way he drummed his fingers on the table like he was already spending the money my brain had earned. "I need to see Emma before I sign anything," I said. "Sophia, you're being dramatic. Emma is fine with my mother. She's probably having the time of her life being spoiled." His smile was practiced, the one he used in board meetings to dismiss concerns. "I said I need to see my daughter." The words came out harder than I intended, and everyone in the room sat up a little straighter. Rachel squeezed my hand. "We can reconvene tomorrow morning. That gives everyone time to review the documentation more thoroughly." "There's nothing to review," Brennan protested. "This is a straightforward asset division based on established corporate structures, nothing about this is straightforward," I interrupted, standing up. The leather chair scraped against the marble floor with a sound like fingernails on glass. "And I want to understand exactly how my patent became David's property to divide." David's mask slipped for just a moment, long enough for me to see the flash of panic in his eyes. "Sophia, you're embarrassing yourself." "And us?" "Embarrassing." The word hung in the air like poison. How many times had he used that word to shut me down? How many brilliant ideas had I swallowed? How many corrections had I bitten back? How many moments of credit had I surrendered because I was embarrassing him? "We'll resume tomorrow," Rachel announced, gathering her papers. 10 a.m. As the opposing legal team filed out, David lingered. For a moment, it was just the two of us in the conference room, the weight of our history settling between us like dust. "Soph," he said, using the nickname that once made my heart flutter. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Think about Emma. Think about the life we built together." I looked at him, this man I'd loved enough to trust with everything, and felt something cold and certain crystallize in my chest. "I am thinking about Emma," I said quietly. "I'm thinking about what kind of world I want to leave her. One where brilliant women get credit for their work, or one where they get erased by the men they trust." His face hardened. "You didn't build Clearwater alone, Sophia. I'm the one who turned your little science project into a real business." "Your little science project." There it was. The casual dismissal wrapped in false affection. The way he'd been rewriting our history, one conversation at a time. I walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the marble with newfound purpose. "Rachel," I called over my shoulder, "I want everything. Patent filings, corporate documents, email records, meeting minutes. Everything from the beginning." "Sophia," David started. "See you tomorrow, David. And next time, bring the real patent application. Not whatever version you've been shopping around." I walked out of that conference room feeling like I was shedding skin, the compliant wife, the supportive partner, the woman who made herself smaller so her husband could appear larger. By tomorrow, I would know exactly what David had hidden from me, and by tomorrow, he would learn that some papers should never have been signed in the first place. The elevator doors closed between us, and for the first time in months, I smiled. The rain hammered against my Honda's windshield as I sat in David's mother's driveway, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Through the living room window, I could see Emma's silhouette bouncing on the couch, probably watching cartoons, blissfully unaware that her parents' marriage was disintegrating in conference rooms across the city. Margaret Morrison had never liked me. Not when I was the broke graduate student who stole her golden boy's attention, and certainly not now that I was the vindictive wife trying to destroy his business empire. At least, that's how she'd see it once David spun the story his way. I pressed my forehead against the cool steering wheel, trying to organize the chaos in my mind. Somewhere in the past 8 years, I'd lost myself so completely that I'd forgotten I was the architect of our success. But sitting in that conference room, seeing my life's work reduced to a line item in David's divorce settlement, had awakened something fierce and familiar. My phone buzzed. "Rachel. I've got preliminary findings," she said without preamble. "Can you meet me at my office? And Sophia, you're going to want to sit down for this. I'm picking up Emma first." "Bring her. My daughter's at the office doing homework anyway. They can keep each other busy while we talk." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Rachel in her cluttered office while Emma and 12-year-old Maria Martinez shared a pizza and debated the merits of various Disney princesses. Through the glass partition, I watched my daughter's animated gestures, her complete trust that adults would handle the complicated stuff. Rachel spread documents across her desk like she was dealing cards in a high-stakes game. Your husband has been very, very busy, Sophia. The first document made my blood run cold. An amended patent application from 2017, filed 6 months after our original submission. David had somehow managed to list himself as the primary inventor, relegating me to contributing researcher. How is this possible? I whispered, running my fingers over the official seal. I was the primary inventor. My name was first on everything. Look at the signature page. My own signature stared back at me, but I had no memory of signing this version. The handwriting looked right, but something felt off about the pressure. The angle of the pen strokes. There's more. Rachel pulled out another folder. Corporate filings from 2018. David restructured Clearwater Technologies and diluted your ownership stake from 49% to 12%. The room spun. That's impossible. I would have had to sign. You did sign. Multiple times? Apparently. Look familiar? She showed me document after document bearing my signature. Board resolutions, ownership transfers, intellectual property assignments. Each one chipping away at my stake in the company I'd helped build. I don't remember signing most of these, I said, studying the papers with growing horror. Some of them, maybe, but David always said they were just corporate formalities. Insurance papers, tax documents. Rachel's expression was grim. He's been systematically erasing you from your own company for years. But here's what really caught my attention. She pulled out a thick manila folder. Bank records. David's been funneling money through shell companies, paying himself consulting fees and performance bonuses that the board never approved. The numbers made me dizzy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions, siphoned away from company accounts into personal investments and offshore holdings. But the board would have noticed. What board? Rachel's laugh was bitter. According to the corporate filings, the Clearwater board consists of David, his college roommate Marcus Webb, and a woman named Patricia Steinberg who doesn't seem to exist. I ran her social security number. It belongs to a 73-year-old retiree in Florida who's never heard of Clearwater Technologies. My mouth went dry. Marcus is our CFO. He's been with us since the beginning. He's also David's business partner in 3 other ventures that I can find so far. They've been moving money around like they're running a shell game. I thought about Marcus, with his easy smile and expensive watches. He'd always been friendly to me, but in that careful way that kept me at arm's length from the real business discussions. Now I understood why. There's something else. Rachel hesitated. I ran a background check on David. Sophia, your husband was married before. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. He would have told me. Rachel slid another document across the desk. A marriage certificate from 2010, 2 years before I met David. The bride's name was Jennifer Huang, listed as a biomedical engineer. She filed for divorce in 2012, citing financial fraud and identity theft. The case was settled out of court, with a substantial payment and a non-disclosure agreement. Jennifer Huang. I repeated the name like it might unlock some hidden memory. I've never heard him mention her. She developed a revolutionary heart valve design while they were married. The patent was filed under David's company, Meridian Medical Technologies. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, he sold the patent to a major medical device manufacturer for $8 million. The pattern was becoming clear, and it made me sick to my stomach. David wasn't just a lying husband, he was a professional predator who targeted brilliant women and stole their innovations. Where is she now? Jennifer? That's where it gets interesting. She's the Chief Technology Officer at Biomed Solutions in Portland. Very successful, very careful about her public profile. I reached out to her attorney this afternoon. And she's willing to talk. Through the glass partition, Emma was showing Maria how to fold a napkin into a flower, her small fingers precise and patient. She had my hands, my attention to detail, my love of solving problems through careful observation. The thought of David doing to her what he'd done to me and Jennifer made fury burn in my chest like acid. What are my options? I asked. Rachel leaned back in her chair, studying me with sharp eyes. Legally? We can challenge the patent filings, especially if we can prove fraud or forgery. We can force a forensic accounting of Clearwater's finances. We can pursue criminal charges for embezzlement and potentially identity theft. And practically, you're going to war with someone who's had years to prepare his defenses. David has money, connections, and a public reputation as a successful entrepreneur. You'll be painted as the bitter ex-wife trying to destroy her husband's achievements. I watched Emma demonstrate some complicated origami technique to Maria, her face bright with the joy of teaching someone else something new. This was what David was really stealing, not just my inventions, but my daughter's understanding of what women could achieve. What would you do? I asked Rachel. If Emma were your daughter? Rachel glanced at Maria, who was struggling with a particularly complex fold. I'd fight. But I'd fight smart. David's gotten away with this pattern because his victims stayed silent. Jennifer Huang couldn't talk because of her NDA. You can't be silenced the same way because you're still married to him. Spousal privilege works both ways. Meaning? Meaning you have access to information and evidence that outsiders don't. You know his habits, his contacts, his weaknesses. You've been living with the enemy for 8 years, Sophia. It's time to use that knowledge. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Talk to Emma. She's excited about our trip to Disneyland next weekend. Don't let lawyer games interfere with our daughter's happiness. The casual manipulation made my jaw clench. Of course he'd promise Emma something special right before trying to steal everything from me. Another signature move from his playbook. I need to see Jennifer Huang, I said. As soon as possible. Rachel nodded. She can meet tomorrow evening. But Sophia, once you start down this path, there's no going back. David will realize what you're doing, and he'll escalate. Are you prepared for that? I looked at Emma again. My brilliant, curious daughter who deserved to grow up in a world where her innovations wouldn't be stolen by the men she trusted. Then I thought about Jennifer Huang, probably sitting in her Portland office right now, still carrying the scars of David's betrayal. He stole my life's work and tried to make me grateful for the scraps, I said quietly. He's been planning to destroy me for years, and I was too trusting to see it. But I see it now. I stood up, my decision crystallizing into something hard and unbreakable. Set up the meeting with Jennifer. And Rachel? I want you to find out everything you can about Patricia Steinberg, the Phantom board member. If David created fake identities for corporate filings, that's federal fraud. I want him to understand that some papers can't be unsigned, but they can definitely be used as evidence. Through the glass, Emma looked up and waved at me, her smile bright and trusting. Tomorrow, I would start building a case that would not only protect my daughter's future but ensure that David Morrison never stole another woman's brilliance again. The war was about to begin, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Again. As we gathered our things to leave, Rachel touched my arm. One more thing. I had my investigator check the divorce papers David filed. He's claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for custody of Emma 3 days a week. That's what we agreed to. No, Sophia. He's asking for 3 days a week and primary decision-making authority for her education and medical care. He's also requesting that you pay him child support. The audacity took my breath away. Child support? I'm unemployed because I've been raising Emma and supporting his career. Exactly. He's claiming that since Clearwater is his company and you have no income, you should be paying him support from whatever settlement you receive. He's trying to make you pay him with your own money. I felt something cold and certain settle in my chest. David wasn't just stealing my past, he was trying to steal my daughter's future too. Set up the meeting with Jennifer, I repeated. And Rachel? I want to know everything about Patricia Steinberg by tomorrow afternoon. If David thinks he can play games with fake identities and forged signatures, he's about to learn that too can play that game. As Emma skipped ahead of me toward the car, chattering about her new friend Maria and the origami flowers they'd made, I realized that David had made one crucial mistake in his elaborate plan to erase me. He'd forgotten that the woman who could invent a revolutionary water purification system was also smart enough to reverse engineer his entire scheme. The real question was, What else would I discover once I started digging? The coffee shop in downtown Portland buzzed with the kind of energy that comes from ambitious people plotting their next moves. I sat in a corner booth, nursing my third espresso and checking my phone obsessively. Jennifer Huang was already 20 minutes late, and part of me wondered if she'd changed her mind about meeting the latest victim in David Morrison's pattern of destruction. Emma was spending the night with my sister Claire in Tacoma, safely away from the emotional minefield our house had become. David had texted me 6 times since yesterday, each message more demanding than the last. The final one, sent at 2 a.m., simply read, "This is insane, Sophia. Call me." I'd turned my phone to silent and driven south. Sophia Chen Morrison? I looked up to find a woman about my age standing beside the table. Jennifer Huang was smaller than I'd expected, with precise features and intelligent eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. She wore a tailored black suit and carried herself with the kind of confidence I used to have before David slowly eroded it away. "Jennifer. Thank you for meeting me." She slid into the booth across from me, her movements economical and careful. "I wasn't sure I would. My attorney advised against it, actually. But when Rachel Martinez mentioned your situation..." She paused, studying my face. "You look tired." "I haven't slept much since I found out about the patent theft. Or about you." Jennifer's smile was bitter. "I wondered when he'd find another brilliant woman to exploit. Though I admit I'm surprised he waited this long." David was never patient when it came to other people's innovations. A waitress appeared, and Jennifer ordered black coffee. We sat in silence until it arrived, 2 women connected by a man who'd stolen pieces of both our lives. "Tell me about the heart valve," I said finally. Jennifer's fingers tightened around her mug. "I developed it during my postdoc at OHSU. Revolutionary wasn't an overstatement, it could have changed cardiac surgery forever." David was finishing his MBA, and I thought he was this brilliant business mind who could help me navigate the commercialization process. "How did you meet?" "A biotech conference in San Francisco. I was presenting my research, and he approached me afterward. Charming, knowledgeable, supportive. He said he wanted to help me change the world." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Familiar story?" "Too familiar." I remembered David approaching me after my presentation on water purification systems at the Environmental Engineering Summit in 2015. The same confident smile, the same promises about changing the world together. "When did you realize what he was doing?" Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, watching steam rise from her coffee. "The patent application process was confusing. David handled all the legal work through his contacts. Said it would be more efficient, less expensive. I was so focused on the research that I didn't pay enough attention to the paperwork. Until I got a call from a venture capitalist asking to meet with the inventor of the Morrison heart valve. Apparently, David had been shopping my design around for months, with himself listed as the primary inventor and me as a contributing researcher. The parallel to my own situation was nauseating. "What did you do?" I confronted him. He said it was a clerical error, that his lawyer had misunderstood the corporate structure. Then he proposed, and I was stupid enough to think that meant he loved me enough to fix it. But he didn't. The marriage made it worse. Suddenly I was just the supportive wife. David started giving interviews about his revolutionary design. When investors came to the house, he'd introduce me as his wife who helped with some of the research. I watched my life's work become his success story. I pulled out my phone and showed her photos of documents Rachel had uncovered. "Look familiar?" Jennifer's face went pale as she recognized the pattern, the amended filings, the signature inconsistencies, the systematic erasure of her contributions. "He did the same thing to you," she whispered. "Exactly the same thing. According to my lawyer. He's been perfecting the technique. You were his practice run." Jennifer's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Practice run. Jesus. Do you know what happened after I filed for divorce?" I shook my head. David's lawyer produced evidence that I'd been having an affair with my research partner at OHSU. Photos of us having lunch, entering his apartment building, working late in the lab together. All completely innocent, but the optics were damaging. "Were you?" "Of course not. But David had been paying a private investigator to follow me for months. He used the evidence to pressure me into a settlement that included a non-disclosure agreement and a complete assignment of patent rights. Said if I fought him, he'd destroy my reputation in the academic community. The calculation behind it made me sick. So you took the settlement. I was 28 years old, professionally isolated, and facing a man with unlimited resources. And no conscience. I took the money and rebuilt my life in Portland. But I never forgot, Sophia. I've been waiting 9 years for someone like you to call. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. My attorney said I couldn't actively participate in your case because of the NDA. But there's nothing preventing me from sharing public records and published research. I opened the folder to find copies of scientific journals, conference proceedings, and university records. Jennifer's fingerprints were all over the heart valve research, documented in peer-reviewed publications dating back to 2009. David claimed he invented the valve based on his MBA thesis research, Jennifer explained. But these papers prove I was publishing on cardiac bioengineering years before I met him. Any competent patent attorney could use this to challenge his claims. Why didn't you do this years ago? The NDA was airtight, and frankly, I was scared. David had money, connections, and a talent for making his problems disappear. I focused on building biomed solutions and tried to put the whole nightmare behind me. My phone buzzed with another text from David. Sophia, you're making a mistake. Come home so we can discuss this rationally. Jennifer noticed my expression. He's starting to panic. How can you tell? The rational discussion phase. That's step 2 in David's playbook. Step 1 is confusion and denial. There must be some mistake. Step 2 is reasonable negotiation. Let's be rational about this. Step 3 is character assassination. She's unstable, vindictive, trying to destroy me. What's step 4? Jennifer's smile was sharp. Scorched earth. He'll try to destroy everything rather than lose control of the narrative. I thought about Emma, about the custody battle David was already positioning, about the years of gaslighting that had made me doubt my own memories. I can't let him do to Emma what he did to us. Then you need to move faster than he does. David's strength is his ability to control information and manipulate perceptions. But he's also arrogant. He assumes everyone else is as easily manipulated as we were. What do you mean? Jennifer leaned forward, her voice dropping. I kept tabs on him after the divorce. Purely self-interest. I wanted to know if he was going to come after me again. I know about Marcus Webb, about the shell companies, about some of the other women he's targeted over the years. Other women? A materials engineer in Denver whose polymer research became the foundation for his failed startup in 2018. A biotechnology researcher in San Diego whose work on gene therapy mysteriously appeared in David's consulting portfolio. He has a type, Sophia. Brilliant women who are isolated in their fields and susceptible to his particular brand of manipulation. The scope of it was staggering. How many? That I know of? At least 6. But here's what David doesn't know: we've been talking. Quietly. Carefully, but we've been sharing information. She pulled out her phone and showed me a group chat titled Phoenix Rising. The members were listed by initials only, but Jennifer explained, 5 women who've had their intellectual property stolen by David Morrison. We've been documenting everything, building a case. A case for what? A class action lawsuit for systematic fraud and intellectual property theft. But more importantly, we've been gathering evidence for criminal charges. The FBI has a task force that investigates patterns of corporate fraud, especially when it involves identity theft and interstate commerce. My heart was racing. You're talking about federal charges. Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, possibly RICO violations if we can prove organized criminal activity. David's been operating across state lines for years, using the same methods to defraud multiple victims. That makes it a federal matter. I stared at the phone screen, at the evidence of a network I'd never suspected. Why are you telling me this? Because you're in the unique position to bring him down. You're his current wife, which means you have access to information the rest of us never had. And unlike the rest of us, you haven't signed an NDA yet. What kind of information? Jennifer's eyes were bright with possibilities. Corporate documents, financial records, communication with co-conspirators. You probably have access to files that could prove the pattern of fraud. The question is, are you willing to use it? I thought about David's study at home, with its locked filing cabinets and password-protected computer. About the conversations I'd overheard between him and Marcus, dismissed as boring business talk. About the private phone calls he took in the garage, always stepping away when I entered the room. If I do this, I said slowly, if I help you build this case, what happens to Emma? David will use her as leverage. That's why we move fast and we move smart. Get the evidence first, then coordinate with law enforcement to execute search warrants and asset freezes simultaneously. By the time David realizes what's happening, he'll be too busy dealing with federal investigators to manipulate custody arrangements. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo of Emma at Disneyland, grinning beside Mickey Mouse. The message read, "She misses her daddy. Don't let lawyers ruin this for her." The manipulation was so transparent it made me angry. Jennifer saw my expression and nodded. He's already escalating to step 3, she observed. Using Emma to guilt you into backing down. What would you do? I asked. If you were me? Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'd burn his whole damn empire to the ground. But I'd do it smart, with evidence and witnesses and enough legal firepower to make sure he never hurt another woman again. She released my hand and sat back. The Phoenix Rising group meets virtually every Sunday. We'd like you to join us this week. You can hear from the others, see the full scope of what David's been doing. And then? Then we give you the tools to make sure page 47 is the last document David Morrison ever tries to steal from a brilliant woman. As I drove back to Seattle that evening, Jennifer's folder on the passenger seat beside me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of a complex problem with an elegant solution waiting to be discovered. David had spent years erasing me from my own story. Now it was time to write the ending he never saw coming. The war was about to become a revolution, and I finally had allies who understood exactly what we were fighting for. Sunday evening found me sitting in my car outside our house, staring at the warm glow emanating from David's study window. He was inside, probably working on damage control, making calls to lawyers and investors, spinning the narrative to his advantage. Emma was at my sister's house for another night, giving me the space I needed to do what came next. My laptop balanced on my steering wheel, connected to my phone's hotspot. In 15 minutes, I would join a video call that would change everything. The Phoenix Rising group was about to meet, and I was their newest member. At exactly 8 p.m., I clicked the encrypted meeting link Jennifer had sent me. 5 video windows opened on my screen, showing women of various ages sitting in home offices, bedrooms, and kitchen tables. They all had the same look in their eyes, intelligence mixed with carefully controlled anger. "Everyone, this is Sophia," Jennifer's voice came through clearly. "David Morrison's current wife and our best hope for finally bringing him down." "Former wife," I corrected. "I filed amended papers yesterday requesting immediate separation." A woman with silver-streaked hair and fierce eyes spoke first. "I'm Patricia Vance, materials engineer from Denver. David stole my polymer research in 2018 and built his failed startup around it. Cost me 3 years of my career and nearly $1 million in development funding." "Lisa Chen," said a younger woman with tired eyes. "Biotech researcher from San Diego. David convinced me to share my gene therapy protocols during what I thought was a consulting relationship. They ended up in his portfolio when he pitched to investors. I'm still fighting to get my research back." One by one, they introduced themselves. Dr. Maria Santos, whose renewable energy patents had been adapted for David's green technology venture. Dr. Rebecca Kim, whose artificial intelligence algorithms had mysteriously appeared in David's consulting presentations. Each story followed the same devastating pattern: brilliant women, isolated in their fields, manipulated by a man who made them believe he loved their minds while he systematically stole their work. "The thing that pisses me off most," Patricia was saying, "is how he made us grateful. Remember that feeling? When he'd throw us scraps of credit, act like he was doing us a favor by mentioning our contributions in interviews." The others murmured agreement, and I felt a surge of recognition. The dinner parties where David would casually mention his genius wife, who helped with the technical aspects. The press interviews where I became the brilliant woman behind the man. Always behind, never beside, certainly never in front. Sophia, Jennifer said, tell them what you discovered about your patent situation. I shared everything, the forged signatures, the amended filings, the systematic erosion of my ownership in Clearwater Technologies. As I talked, I watched their faces, seeing my own shock and betrayal reflected in their expressions. He's gotten more sophisticated, Rebecca observed. When he stole my AI work, it was crude, just plagiarizing my research papers and presentations. But what he did to you, Sophia, that's a whole corporate fraud operation. That's why we need her, Jennifer explained. Sophia has access to David's files, his computer, his phone records. She can get us documentation that proves the pattern of systematic fraud. What exactly are you asking me to do? I asked, though part of me already knew. Lisa leaned forward. We need evidence that David has been running a coordinated scheme to steal intellectual property from women in STEM fields. Banking records, communication with Marcus Webb, documentation of the shell companies, maybe even recordings of him discussing his methods. That sounds like espionage. It sounds like a wife gathering evidence of her husband's crimes, Patricia corrected. Everything in your house, everything on your shared computers, everything in your joint financial records, it's legally accessible to you. Maria pulled up a document on her screen. We've been working with a federal prosecutor named Daniel Kim, no relation to Rebecca. He's part of a task force investigating organized corporate fraud. But he needs more than individual cases. He needs proof of pattern and coordination. What kind of proof? Jennifer answered. Communication between David and Marcus about targeting specific women. Financial records showing how they've laundered stolen intellectual property through shell companies. Documentation of the fake board members and corporate structures they've created. I thought about David's study, with its locked filing cabinets and encrypted hard drives. About the conversations I'd been excluded from, the business trips that never quite made sense, the mysterious income sources that funded our lifestyle. There's something else, Rebecca said. We think David has been getting inside information about women researchers from someone in the academic community. Someone who has access to grant applications, patent filings, conference presentations. A mole, I said. Exactly. Someone who can identify promising research before it goes public, then feed that information to David so he can target the researchers. The implications made me sick. How long do you think this has been going on? We can trace it back at least 10 years, Jennifer said. Possibly longer. David has been refining his methods, building a network of collaborators, creating an entire ecosystem around stealing women's intellectual property. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Come home, sophomore. We need to talk. I know you went to Portland yesterday. The women noticed my expression. He's monitoring you, Patricia observed. Probably tracking your phone, your car, maybe your credit cards. How do you know? Because he did it to all of us. David's paranoid about maintaining control. If he thinks you're building a case against him, he'll want to know everything you're doing. I showed them the text. Rebecca frowned. That's not casual surveillance. He knows exactly where you went and probably who you met with. You need to assume he's been tracking your movements for a while. The violation felt like another layer of betrayal. What do I do? You play along, Jennifer said. Go home, act normal, let him think he's still in control. But while you're there, document everything. We need proof of his surveillance methods. 2. That's another federal crime. Maria shared her screen again, showing a detailed timeline. We've mapped out David's pattern over the past decade. Every 6 to 12 months, he targets a new researcher. He studies them for months before making contact, learning their work, their personal situations, their vulnerabilities. It's predatory, Lisa said quietly. He hunts brilliant women the way serial killers hunt victims. Methodically, deliberately, with no regard for the lives he destroys. I stared at the timeline, seeing my own story as just one point in a decade-long pattern of abuse. How many others do you think there are? Women who haven't come forward. Dozens, Rebecca said grimly. Maybe hundreds. David's been in the academic and startup communities for 15 years. We're probably just seeing the tip of the iceberg. The weight of it was overwhelming. All those brilliant minds, All that innovative research, stolen and repurposed by a man who contributed nothing but manipulation and fraud. The Phoenix Rising. Name, I said. Where did it come from? Jennifer smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Because we're rising from the ashes of what David tried to burn down. Our careers, our innovations, our trust in the system. But more than that. We're going to make sure he burns instead. What do you need from me? I asked. Specifically. Patricia pulled up a checklist. Corporate documents showing the shell company structures. Financial records proving money laundering through multiple accounts. Communication between David and Marcus about targeting strategies. Evidence of the fake board members and forged signatures. And, Rebecca added, proof of how he's been surveilling and stalking potential targets. Federal prosecutors love technology crimes, wire fraud, computer fraud, identity theft. Those carry serious penalties. How much time do I have? Not much, Jennifer admitted. David's smart enough to start destroying evidence once he realizes what you're doing. We need everything within the next week. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David. Sophia, I know you're upset, but you're being manipulated by people who want to destroy our family. Come home so we can fix this together. The gaslighting was so transparent now, so obviously manipulative. How had I fallen for it for so many years? There's one more thing, Maria said. We've been working with a cybersecurity expert who specializes in corporate espionage. If David has been surveilling you electronically, she can help you turn the tables. What do you mean? Hidden cameras in your house, keystroke loggers on your computer, GPS tracking on your car, we can find all of it. And more importantly, we can use his own surveillance equipment against him. The meeting continued for another hour, with each woman sharing specific techniques they'd learned for gathering evidence, protecting themselves from retaliation, and working with federal investigators. By the time we logged off, I had a detailed action plan and a support network that understood exactly what I was up against. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the clarity that comes from finally understanding the true scope of a problem. David wasn't just a lying husband or even a garden-variety fraudster. He was the center of an organized criminal enterprise that had been destroying brilliant women for over a decade. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, David's car conspicuously absent. Probably meeting with his lawyers or plotting his next move with Marcus. I had maybe an hour before he returned, an hour to begin the process of gathering evidence that would bring down his entire operation. I let myself into the house and headed straight for David's study. The door was locked, as always, but I knew where he hid the spare key. As I opened the filing cabinets and powered up his computer, I thought about Jennifer's words from our coffee shop meeting. Some papers can't be unsigned, but they can definitely be used as evidence. It was time to find out exactly what David Morrison had been signing his name to for the past decade. And more importantly, it was time to make sure those signatures would be the evidence that brought him down. The phoenix was about to rise, and David's empire was about to burn. David's study felt different at night, filled with shadows that seemed to harbor secrets. I sat at his mahogany desk, my hands trembling as I opened the first filing cabinet. The Phoenix Rising team had given me specific instructions: document everything, photograph important papers, but leave no trace of my search. David's paranoia meant he would notice if anything was out of place. The first folder contained corporate documents for Clearwater Technologies, but not the versions I'd seen before. These showed a completely different ownership structure, with David holding 78% of the company and someone named S. Chen Consulting owning 15%. My maiden name, but I had never created a consulting company. I photographed every page with my phone, my hands steadying as I fell into the rhythm of systematic documentation. The next folder revealed correspondence with Marcus Webb dating back to 2014, 2 years before I thought they'd met. The emails made my blood run cold. David, the Chen woman looks promising. Water purification patent could be worth 50M plus. If commercialized properly. She's isolated, no family money, relationship history suggests daddy issues. Standard approach. Marcus agreed. Begin preliminary financial surveillance. Need 6 months to establish pattern of dependency before approach. They had been stalking me for 6 months before David ever introduced himself at that conference. Every chance encounter, every shared coffee, every romantic gesture had been calculated and planned. I photographed the entire correspondence thread, documenting how they'd researched my background, my financial situation, even my dating history. The deeper I dug, the more systematic the operation became. David kept detailed files on dozens of women researchers, complete with photos, financial records, and psychological profiles. Each folder was labeled with a code: acquisition target, in progress, completed, or abandoned. Jennifer Huang's file was marked completed 8.2M recovery. My file was labeled in progress, projected 25M plus recovery. Recovery. Like we were natural resources to be harvested. I found Lisa Chen's file from San Diego, marked abandoned, too much family support. The notes explained that David had backed off when he realized Lisa's large extended family would make isolation difficult. Patricia Vance's file showed a 3-year timeline of manipulation, from initial contact through patent theft to final extraction. David's computer required a password, but I knew his patterns. He'd always been predictable about security, using combinations of meaningful dates and Emma's name. On the third try, I got in Emma 2016, the year our daughter was born and the same year he'd stolen my patent. His email folders were organized like a criminal enterprise. Targets, assets, legal, and distribution. The assets folder contained detailed financial records showing how stolen intellectual property was laundered through shell companies, then sold to legitimate corporations. My water purification patent had generated $47 million in licensing fees over the past 7 years. David and Marcus had split the profits 60-40 through a maze of offshore accounts and fake consulting companies. I had received exactly none of it, despite being the actual inventor. The targets folder contained active surveillance files on 12 women researchers across the country. Photos taken with telephoto lenses, credit reports obtained illegally, even transcripts of phone conversations. David had been building dossiers on these women for months, preparing to destroy their lives the way he destroyed mine. One file made me sick to my stomach. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, a climate scientist at UC Berkeley whose carbon capture research could revolutionize environmental technology. The surveillance photos showed her picking up her young son from daycare, unaware that a predator was studying her every move. I was photographing the Rodriguez file when I heard David's car pull into the driveway. Panic shot through me as I quickly closed the email folders and shut down the computer. I had maybe 2 minutes before he entered the house. I shoved the last documents back into the filing cabinet and locked it, then slipped out of the study and up the stairs. By the time David's key turned in the front door, I was in our bedroom, sitting at my vanity and brushing my hair like I'd been there all evening. Sophia? His voice carried through the house, cautious and probing. Upstairs, I called, proud of how normal I sounded. He appeared in the bedroom doorway, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face showing the strain of whatever crisis management he'd been doing. We need to talk. I set down my brush and turned to face him. About what? About whatever insanity you've gotten yourself involved in. My lawyer says you've been asking for discovery documents that don't exist. Patent applications that were never filed. You're embarrassing yourself, Sophia. The gaslighting felt different now that I knew the scope of his manipulation. I'm embarrassing myself by asking questions about my own invention. Your invention? David's laugh was sharp and ugly. Sophia, you contributed to the research, yes. But turning a laboratory experiment into a viable commercial product required business expertise you simply don't have. I built Clearwater Technologies. I made us wealthy. With my innovation. With our combined efforts. But if you want to play legal games and destroy everything we built together, fine. Just remember that Emma will suffer the consequences of your vindictiveness. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern for our daughter. But now I knew it was just another item in his playbook, documented in emails where he and Marcus discussed using children as leverage against their targets. Where were you tonight? I asked, changing the subject. David's eyes narrowed slightly. Crisis management meetings. When your wife starts making wild accusations about forged documents and stolen patents, it requires immediate attention from legal counsel. Which lawyer? Brennan? Among others. Sophia, I'm trying to protect our family here. But I can't do that if you're working with people who want to destroy us. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at our backyard where Emma's swing set sat empty in the moonlight. Who says I'm working with anyone? Portland, Sophia. You drove to Portland yesterday and met with someone. My security consultant flagged the trip as unusual activity. Security consultant. He meant the private investigator who'd been tracking my movements, probably for years. I went shopping. Powell's Books, some boutiques downtown. Am I not allowed to leave Seattle anymore? David studied my face carefully. You met with someone. A woman, at a coffee shop on Northwest 23rd. You talked for over 2 hours. The surveillance was more extensive than I'd imagined. They had photos, probably audio recordings, detailed documentation of my every move. But instead of fear, I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. Are you having me followed, David? I'm protecting our family from people who want to destroy us. Do you have any idea how many vindictive ex-employees and failed competitors would love to see me fall? I have to take precautions. Ex-employees like Jennifer Huang. The name hit him like a physical blow. David's face went white, then flushed red as he struggled to maintain composure. What did you say? Jennifer Huang. Your first wife. The biomedical engineer whose heart valve design made you rich. I turned from the window to face him directly. The woman you erased from her own invention. David sat down heavily on the edge of our bed. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely shaken. Sophia, whatever she told you, she told me the truth. About the patent fraud, the forged signatures, the systematic way you steal brilliant women's work and make them grateful for scraps of credit. Jennifer was unstable. Paranoid. She couldn't handle the pressure of commercializing her research, so she created conspiracy theories about the same things you did to me. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken in his study. Explain this, David. Explain how my patent became your property through documents I never signed. David stared at the phone screen, his lawyer's mind probably calculating how much I'd seen, how much I knew. Where did you get that? From your files. The ones you keep locked in your study, documenting every step of your criminal enterprise. He stood up abruptly, anger replacing shock. You went through my private papers? Sophia, that's a violation of attorney-client privilege, corporate confidentiality. Those are my patents, David. My research, my innovation. I have every right to documentation about my own intellectual property. You have no idea what you're playing with here. The people you're talking to, the lawyers filling your head with fantasies about stolen patents, they're using you to attack me. And when this blows up, Emma will be the one who suffers. The Emma card again. But this time, I was ready for it. Actually, David, I think Emma will benefit from learning that her mother is the real inventor behind Clearwater Technologies. That women can be brilliant scientists and business leaders, not just supportive wives who smile and stay quiet while men steal their work. David's mask was slipping, revealing something ugly underneath. You think you can destroy me? You think some bitter ex-wives and failed researchers can bring down everything I've built? I think 12 women with documented evidence of your criminal fraud can do exactly that. The number hit him like a punch. His eyes widened as he realized how much I knew, how many of his victims had found each other. Sophia, listen to me very carefully. You're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. Walk away from this insanity now, sign the settlement papers, take your money and rebuild somewhere else. Because if you try to fight me, I will destroy you so completely that Emma won't even remember your name. The threat was naked now, all pretense of concern stripped away. This was David Morrison without his careful masks, revealing the predator that had been hiding behind the successful businessman facade. Is that what you told Jennifer? And Patricia? And Lisa? And Maria? And Rebecca? I named each of his victims, watching him flinch with every name. Did you threaten to destroy them too? David's face had gone cold and calculating. You've been very busy, haven't you? Building your little support group of failures and has-beens. But here's what you don't understand, Sophia, I have resources you can't imagine. Legal teams, private investigators, connections in every major corporation and government agency. I can make you disappear from every database, every record, every trace of your pathetic existence. Like you made Jennifer disappear? Jennifer took her settlement and shut up like a smart woman. You should do the same. I walked to the bedroom door, then turned back to face him. No, David. I don't think I will. Sophia, I'm going to check on Emma tomorrow. And then I'm going to make sure that every woman you've targeted, every innovation you've stolen, every life you've destroyed, gets justice. David's voice followed me down the hall, cold and final. You have no idea what you've just started. But he was wrong. I knew exactly what I'd started. And thanks to his own surveillance files, I now had everything I needed to finish it. The Phoenix Rising meeting had been just the beginning. Tomorrow, I would turn David's own evidence against him, and show him what happened when brilliant women finally stopped staying quiet. The war was about to become a rout, and David Morrison had just provided all the ammunition I needed. Point 3. Weeks later, I stood in a federal courthouse in downtown Seattle, watching as FBI agents led David Morrison away in handcuffs. The media frenzy outside was unprecedented, reporters calling it the largest intellectual property fraud case in Pacific Northwest history. But for me, the most satisfying moment wasn't the arrest or the headlines. It was the look of absolute shock on David's face when he realized that his carefully constructed empire had been brought down by the women he dismissed as powerless. The final phase had moved with military precision. After our confrontation in the bedroom, I'd contacted FBI Special Agent Daniel Kim through the Phoenix Rising network. Within 48 hours, federal agents had obtained warrants for David's files, computers, and financial records. The evidence I'd photographed became the foundation for charges spanning wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, and racketeering under the RICO Act. Rachel Martinez stood beside me on the courthouse steps, fielding questions from reporters while I held Emma's small hand. My daughter had taken the revelations about her father surprisingly well, perhaps because I'd been careful to explain things in terms she could understand. Daddy had taken credit for other people's work, and now he had to face consequences. Mrs. Chen Morrison, a reporter called out, "How does it feel to know your water purification patent was worth $47 million? It feels like validation," I replied, my voice steady. "Not just for me, but for every brilliant woman whose work has been stolen by men who thought we'd stay quiet forever." The final tally was staggering. Federal investigators had traced David and Marcus's network back 12 years, identifying 27 victims and over $300 million in stolen intellectual property. The shell companies, fake board members, and offshore accounts had all crumbled under forensic accounting that revealed every hidden transaction Marcus Webb had flipped within hours of his arrest, providing detailed testimony about their methods in exchange for a reduced sentence. The academic mole turned out to be Dr. Richard Steinberg, a university administrator with access to grant databases who'd been feeding David information about promising female researchers for years. He was facing his own federal charges. "Mommy." Emma tugged on my sleeve, "Are we going to be poor now?" I knelt down to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No, sweetheart. Daddy's company was built on work that belonged to other people. Now those people are getting their fair share, and we're going to be just fine. More than fine, actually. The civil settlements would ensure that every victim received compensation proportional to the value their stolen innovations had generated. My share alone would be enough to start my own research company and fund Emma's education through graduate school." Jennifer Huang approached us as the crowd of reporters began to disperse. She looked different than she had at our first coffee shop meeting, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "The Phoenix Rising board meeting is tonight," she said with a smile. "We're officially dissolving the group. Mission accomplished? Mission transformed. We're launching the Phoenix Foundation, a non-profit that will provide legal support and resources for women in STEM who face intellectual property theft. The settlement money will fund it for the next 20 years. I thought about Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, the climate scientist whose surveillance file I discovered in David's computer. The FBI had warned her about the targeting, and she'd immediately moved her research to a more secure facility. David would never get the chance to steal her carbon capture innovations. "There's something else," Jennifer continued. "Biomed Solutions is opening a Seattle office, and I could use a brilliant water purification expert to head our environmental division. Interested?" Emma bounced excitedly beside me. "Mommy, you could be a real scientist again." "Again?" I laughed. "Sweetheart, I never stopped being a scientist. I just let someone else take credit for my work. That won't happen again. Rachel joined our conversation, her tablet full of updates from the ongoing legal proceedings. David's lawyer is pushing for a plea agreement. Apparently, federal prison isn't appealing to someone accustomed to luxury. What kind of deal? Full restitution, cooperation with ongoing investigations, and 15 years minimum. The prosecutor isn't feeling generous, they want to send a message about intellectual property fraud. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and sadness. David had made his choices, built his empire on stolen dreams, destroyed brilliant careers for personal profit. The consequences were entirely of his own making. Mrs. Chen Morrison? A young woman approached hesitantly. I'm Dr. Sarah Park from the University of Washington. I wanted to thank you. For what? I was on David Morrison's target list. The FBI showed me the surveillance file he'd been building. Photos, financial records, research summaries. If you hadn't exposed him, I would have been his next victim. Sarah's words reminded me why the past 3 weeks of depositions, interviews, and legal proceedings had been worth every sleepless night. It wasn't just about justice for the women David had already victimized, it was about protecting the brilliant minds he would have destroyed in the future. What's your research focus? I asked. Sustainable agriculture technology. I've developed a soil enhancement system that could revolutionize food production in arid climates. Jennifer's eyes lit up. Biomed Solutions has been looking for agricultural innovations. Would you be interested in discussing a legitimate partnership? One where you keep full credit and ownership of your work. As Jennifer and Sarah exchanged contact information, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the excitement of watching brilliant women support each other instead of competing for male approval. David's downfall had created space for something better to grow. Emma tugged on my hand again. Mommy, can we go see the water cleaning machines you invented? They're called purification systems, and yes, we can visit the manufacturing facility next week. Would you like that? Can I tell my class that my mommy is a famous inventor? You can tell them that your mommy never gave up, even when things seemed impossible. Later that evening, I sat in my home office, formerly David's study, reviewing the incorporation papers for Chen Environmental Solutions. My new company would focus on sustainable water technology, with a mission to provide clean drinking water to underserved communities worldwide. Every patent would be filed in my name alone, every innovation fully credited to its creator. The Phoenix Rising Group had held its final meeting via video conference, with 12 women celebrating not just David's downfall but their collective rise. Patricia Vance was launching her own materials consulting firm. Lisa Chen had received a major NIH grant for her gene therapy research. Maria Santos was being courted by 3 different renewable energy companies. Rebecca Kim was starting an AI ethics nonprofit. We'd all been diminished by David Morrison's predatory behavior, made smaller by his systematic gaslighting and theft. But in fighting back together, we discovered something more powerful than any individual innovation, the strength that comes when brilliant women refuse to be silenced. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Claire. Emma's asleep. She told me today that she wants to be an inventor like her mommy when she grows up. You did good, Sophia. I walked to the window overlooking our backyard, where Emma's swing set caught the moonlight. Tomorrow, I would sign the final divorce papers. The real ones this time, not David's fraudulent attempt to steal my life's work. The settlement would give me full custody of Emma, ownership of our house, and the freedom to rebuild my career on my own terms. The insurance money from Clearwater Technologies would be distributed among David's victims over the next year. My water purification patents would be transferred back to my name, where they belonged. And somewhere in a federal holding facility, David Morrison was learning what happened when you built an empire on other people's dreams. I thought about page 47 of those divorce papers, the document that had started this whole journey. David had thought he could erase me with paperwork, reduce my contributions to fine print in his corporate documents. Instead, his greed had provided the evidence that brought down his entire criminal network. Some papers, as Rachel had said, couldn't be unsigned. But they could definitely be used to write a very different ending. The phoenix had risen from the ashes of David's destruction, and we were all flying higher than he'd ever imagined possible. In trying to steal our brilliance, he'd taught us something invaluable. brilliant women are most dangerous when they finally stop staying quiet. I opened my laptop and began typing the first grant application for the Phoenix Foundation. There were other women out there facing the same predatory behavior, the same systematic theft of their innovations. But now they would have allies, resources, and a network of survivors who understood exactly what they were fighting. David Morrison had spent years signing papers that stole other people's dreams. Now it was time for the rest of us to start signing papers that would protect them. The war was over. The Phoenix had won. And the future belonged to the brilliant women who refused to let anyone else take credit for changing the world. Outside my window, Emma's swing moved gently in the breeze, carrying the promise of a daughter who would grow up knowing that her mother's name belonged on her own innovations. That was worth more than any settlement, any justice, any revenge. That was worth everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.